My name is Coach Greg and I'm here to talk to you about the Actualize Principles. So this is some of the nutrition and lifestyle guidelines that we have in place here at the gym to help you achieve the greatest results possible. So I'm going to cover over a number of different topics, so kind of just follow along on this piece of paper that you should have available to you. Feel free to print it out, mark it up, do as you please there. But the first thing that we're going to talk about is this 90-10 rule. And that's ideally how we're going to structure your eating to make sure that we can be the most consistent and have the greatest sustainability and diet adherence possible. So the 90-10 rule is essentially meaning 90% of the time you're going to follow that list of foods that we've given you and try to stick to those foods on that list. And so those are including the proteins, fats, carbs, and veggies. And then that means 10% of the time that you can kind of stray away from that. And that's going to be what allows us to be sustainable and have this flexibility with our diet to create the most adherence. And so that means if you're going out and being social, going to a restaurant, it's a birthday or things like that, that we can still have and partake in those festivities, but we are just being very mindful about it. And we're going to account for that 10% of the time. And if we think about it, if we're saying maybe you have 4 meals a day, 7 days a week, that's 28 meals. So if we think 10%, that'll be 2.8, and we'll just kind of round down to 2 for this 6-week challenge. So 2 meals out of the week that you can kind of have as a little bit of an off meal plan. So whatever that looks like to you, and maybe you're going out to eat and you're going to get some burger and french fries, great. Or maybe you want to have a dessert and you're going to do that. Okay, cool. Enjoy your dessert, right? Because we really want this to be sustainable and it's not trying to create restriction, because ideally when we're thinking of a diet, it needs to be able to fit into our everyday life. And if we're thinking we have to cut foods out, we have to restrict them, we can't have them, that's ultimately not going to lead us to success in the long run. Because many of those fad diets, that's kind of the approach that they have, is right, they're cutting out certain macronutrients or certain food groups in certain even foods cookies or sugars and things like that. But that's just a part of our everyday eating and a part of our everyday life. So why don't we just figure out a way to incorporate them into our diet, but without having to go overboard and just having to monitor kind of the quantity that we have. So that 90-10 rule is going to be really important to achieving the best results during this 6-week challenge. And really, we're just trying to focus on creating sustainability and focusing out of this diet mindset and thinking, how is this going to set me up as a lifestyle of eating and living? Because that's ultimately going to have the greatest success for you. And we find that the people who have the greatest success during the 6-week challenge and beyond in kind of any, of their health and fitness goals are people who plan their meals out. And so typically if you go the night before and you plan out what you're going to have for that day, for your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, and your snacks, then you don't have to think about it when you're going through your day. And it's you already have it written down or mapped out, even written or put into your MyFitnessPal or Chronometer or whatever food tracker you're using. So then you can stay true and accountable to kind of what you have placed. And that doesn't mean there isn't some flexibility and that's going to be exactly set in stone of what you're going to do. But if you're following a certain calorie or macronutrient prescription, then you're ultimately going to be able to make sure that the day before you're hitting all those targets as needed. And then if you're planning it out and you need to make sure you got your protein, your fat, your carb, and your veggie, then you can structure your meals in a way that is compliant with that. And so if you are able to plan things out, it takes out some of that decision fatigue, especially if you're running around and having a hectic day. But we can really be sure that you're hitting your goals because you have planned out your nutrition. We also want to see, can we reduce the amount of junk food in our home? So if it's kind of out of sight, it's out of mind. So you have control over your food environment, or maybe you don't, but maybe you have some say into actually what's brought into your home. So the less of that junk food, and we're thinking a lot of the processed foods, the fast foods, alcohol, and things of that nature. If we just don't keep them in the house, then it's going to be a lot harder for you to actually eat them. And so maybe it's late at night and you're wanting some snacks or you want some sugary treat. It's going to, if it's not in your house, then you're going to actually have to go out, drive to the store, get it, come back and eat it. And if at that point you really, really want it and you do that, then okay, maybe that's it. And then you go and have that and enjoy it. But then the next day you get right back to it. But I guarantee 99% of the time you're just gonna be okay, nope, I don't need that. that urge passes and then you're able to kind of move on from that. So see if you can control the amount of food and the quality of food that's brought into your home. We also, we've talked about kind of the way of eating, but we want to structure our meals in a way that we can have like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then potentially having 1 to 2 snacks during the day. And maybe one of those is like your post-workout protein shake. But we find that if people start the day by making sure they get some kind of food in their system, that it's gonna reduce the tendency of overeating in the night, just because we're getting more calories in earlier in the day. So you're not gonna have as many of those late night cravings or those binge foods habits that you might have. So breakfast is gonna be a really important thing. Try to have that within the first hour of waking, because that's gonna also help to offset the cortisol levels in our body. And so we can start to reduce those, and we can allow our body to kind of go into its natural state, into its natural rhythm. Ideally, we're trying to focus on eating a majority of our foods that are gonna be whole foods. So think single ingredient foods. And if you're shopping at the grocery store, think of typically the perimeter of what you're gonna be shopping. So those are gonna be like our produce aisle, and we're thinking like, a lot of the lean meats and things of that nature, right? Because if we think more whole natural foods, that's gonna cut out a lot of the processed and junk foods, which potentially, aren't gonna be as nutrient dense or vitamin rich as some of the whole foods are. So if we focus on those things, then it's gonna be a lot easier to adhere not only to that 90-10 rule, but also to helping you achieve your body composition goals and your overall health goals in general. Because whole foods are just gonna be a lot more satiating, and like I already said, they're gonna be a lot more vitamin rich and nutrient dense. We also wanna make sure that you stay really, really, really well hydrated. So as a general guideline, and it's not perfect, but shoot for half your body weight in ounces of water. So if you weigh 200 pounds, then you're gonna shoot for 100 ounces of water, okay? And at a minimum, we really ask you to drink at least 8 gallons, because there's so many things that hydration affects, and it's, our cognition, our performance, our mental clarity, our ability to think. So like all of these things are really important to make sure that we are drinking plenty of water. And if you have a hard time making sure that you actually are taking those in, then that's sometimes where a supplement can come into play, and you think of adding some electrolytes into your diet. And so we have Element here, and I'll touch on that in a later video. So, Element is just an electrolyte tablet that you can pour into your drink and shake it up, and then you're good to go there. And that's just gonna help with making sure that your body is actually absorbing that water and taking it into the cells and into its tissues like it should. We have a number of different supplements as well, so make sure you stay tuned for that video that we'll touch on. That is really it's not something that is necessary, but definitely is going to help you to reach your ultimate goals and your further that recovery process. So supplements have a role. It's a small one, but it is a very important role. So stay tuned for the supplement talk. And then some of the other lifestyle things is we want to focus on our sleep. So ideally, we're shooting somewhere between 7 and 9 hours of good quality sleep. So, if you wear a fitness tracker of some sort, some kind of wearable, make sure that you're looking at that maybe on a regular basis and see, what's your REM sleep looking like, what's your deep sleep, how many hours are you actually getting, because that can be a good indicator of your ability to recover from the workouts that you're doing. And they say there's studies showing that even less than 6 hours a night can affect your fat loss results and overall just performance in general. So it really is an important component to ensuring we have the best overall health. And lastly, we want to touch on just 2 other things. It's making sure that you find time to kind of be able to unwind and relax and de-stress. And so, at the end of the night, maybe it's doing some breath work and just focusing on some big, deep breaths to just help to calm your central nervous system down and get into more of a parasympathetic mode. And maybe it's you do a little bit of reading or some journaling or some gratitude practice or something that's just going to allow you to kick back, relax, and to promote a better transition into sleep itself. And then the last thing that we'll touch on here is our step count. And once again, if you have a wearable on you, maybe it's something that you start to keep track of, because adding steps into our day could potentially be a way that we can just help to promote greater health. And they have that 10,000 rule, and that's kind of an arbitrary number, so don't necessarily focus on that. But potentially it's seeing, can we up it from what your current average is? And maybe you're at just 4,000. Then cool, could we up to 5,000 or 6,000? right? Because then that's gonna force you to get out and get some extra movement in your day. And that extra movement is gonna lead to just kind of overall better health, burning a little bit more calories and potentially helping you hit your health and fitness goals, kind of whatever those are. So those are kind of the main actualized principles that we have here that are just gonna help you to create a more sustainable and healthy lifestyle.